The complaint letter was already written. Sitting on Supervisor Janet Morrison's desk at Denver International Airport, waiting to be sent to Human Resources. "Fire the slow security guard at Gate 27, it read. "Robert Hayes is inefficient, causes delays, and needs to be replaced immediately." But before that letter could be sent, Robert Hayes did something that made everyone realize they'd been completely wrong about him. Because what looks like slowness to civilians looks like tactical awareness to a Navy SEAL. Denver International Airport, Tuesday morning, October 15th, 2019. Gate 27, Terminal B. The morning rush is in full swing. Business travelers checking their phones, families juggling luggage, everyone moving with that particular urgency that only airports can create. And there's Robert Hayes, 62 years old, gray hair slightly disheveled, wearing the standard blue uniform of airport security. For 3 years, he's worked this same checkpoint, and for 3 years, passengers have complained about him. "He's too slow," they'd mutter as he carefully examined each bag. "Why does he take so long with every single person?" they'd whisper as Robert methodically checked IDs, looking at each passenger with an intensity that made some people uncomfortable. Sarah Chen, a frequent flyer from Seattle, had actually started a petition. "Replace the security guard at Gate 27, it said, with over 200 signatures from regular travelers. His inefficiency is causing missed flights and unnecessary delays. What Sarah and the other passengers didn't know was that Robert Hayes wasn't being slow. He was being thorough. And there's a difference between those two things that could mean the difference between life and death. You see, when you've spent 20 years as a Navy SEAL, with 12 of those years in SEAL Team 6, the most elite counter-terrorism unit in the world, you don't just check things. You assess. You analyze. You look for patterns that don't belong, behaviors that don't match, details that everyone else misses. Robert Hayes had joined the Navy at 18, straight out of high school in small-town Montana. Basic training, then BUDS, the brutal 6-month selection course where 80% of candidates quit or get cut. Robert didn't quit. He thrived. But what civilians never understand about special operations is that it changes you, not just physically, but mentally. Your brain rewires itself to see threats everywhere, because in Robert's world, threats were everywhere. That car parked wrong? Could be a VBIED, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. That person walking too fast, or too slow, or with their hands in their pockets? Could be carrying a weapon. After 20 years, Robert's mind had become a threat detection system that never turned off. Which was why, when he retired from the Navy in 2016, civilian life had been difficult. The transition counselors had warned him about this. "You might feel restless," they'd said. Many special operations veterans struggle with the pace of civilian life. What they didn't mention was the constant feeling that something was wrong, that dangers were lurking just outside your peripheral vision, that the ordinary world was somehow more dangerous than the war zones, because at least in war zones, everyone knew to be careful. Robert had tried different jobs: private security, too much sitting around; corporate consulting, too many meetings, not enough action; teaching at a military academy, too many memories of friends who didn't make it home. But airport security? That felt right. Protecting people, watching for threats, using his skills in a way that mattered, even if nobody understood what he was really doing. The complaints had started almost immediately. Robert's supervisors, Janet Morrison and Mike Rodriguez, had called him into the office 6 times in 3 years. "Robert, we need to talk about efficiency," Janet had said during their most recent meeting. "Passengers are complaining. You're taking too long with each screening. The average security check should take 45 seconds. Yours are taking 2 minutes." Robert had tried to explain. "Ma'am, I'm being thorough. I'm catching things other guards miss." "Like what things?" Mike had asked. "Inconsistencies, nervous behavior, items that don't belong." Robert paused, trying to find words that would make sense to civilians. People who are planning something bad, they have tells, they act differently. I can spot them. Janet and Mike had exchanged glances. The kind of glances that said, "This guy might be paranoid." "Robert," Janet had said gently, "this is Den—" The complaint letter on Janet's desk was the final straw. 3 pages of passenger grievances, flight delay statistics, and a recommendation for immediate termination. "Robert Hayes is clearly unsuited for customer-facing airport security work," it concluded. Janet had planned to send it that Tuesday afternoon, right after the morning shift ended. She never got the chance. Tuesday, October 15th, 2019, 10:15 a.m., Gate 27, Security Checkpoint. Robert was working his usual pattern. Each passenger approached, he'd check their ID against their boarding pass, look at their face, assess their demeanor. Most people were exactly what they appeared to be. Tired travelers, worried about flights, thinking about meetings or vacations. But at 10:16 a.m., 3 men approached his checkpoint. And immediately, Robert's training kicked in. First man, Ahmed Nazir, according to his passport. 28 years old, traveling from Denver to New York. Nothing unusual about his documents, but his hands were sweating, despite the cool airport air conditioning. His eyes kept darting to the other 2 men, subtle glances that suggested coordination. Second man, Malik Hassan, 31 years old, same flight to New York. His story checked out, business trip, sales conference. But he was carrying a carry-on bag that looked heavier than its size suggested. And when Robert asked him to place it on the scanner, Hassan hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Most people wouldn't notice. Robert noticed. Third man, Omar Rashid, 25 years old, also New York bound. Clean documents, reasonable story. But he was the one Robert focused on, because Omar was displaying what special operations personnel call pre-mission indicators. Heightened awareness, controlled breathing. The kind of calm that comes from rehearsing a plan over and over. Robert had seen these indicators before. In Iraq, moments before IED attacks. In Afghanistan, right before ambushes. In training scenarios where CA teams were about to breach buildings. These 3 men weren't random passengers. They were a team. "Sir," Robert said to Omar, keeping his voice calm and professional, "could you step aside for a moment?" Random additional screening. It wasn't random. Robert was buying time. That's when Omar made a mistake. A tiny one, but Robert caught it. Omar's eyes flicked toward the gate departure board, then to his watch, then to his 2 companions. The kind of synchronized timing check that indicated a coordinated operation. Robert had seen enough. "Gentlemen," Robert said, his voice taking on a different tone. Not the friendly airport employee anymore. Something harder. Something that carried 20 years of authority. "I'm going to need all 3 of you to step into the secondary screening area." Ahmed started to protest. "This is racial profiling. We have rights." "You absolutely have rights," Robert cut him off. "And right now, you have the right to cooperate with security screening, or you have the right to miss your flight. Your choice." Malik Hassan was reaching into his jacket pocket. Slowly, casually, but Robert caught the movement. In that pocket was either a weapon or a detonator. Robert's training told him it was probably both. Time slowed down, the way it always did in combat situations. Robert could see every detail with crystal clarity. The other passengers continuing their normal routines, unaware that anything was wrong. The other security guards focused on their own checkpoints. Janet Morrison in her office, probably reading that complaint letter. And 3 men who were about to do something terrible. "Hands where I can see them," Robert said quietly. Not shouting, not causing a scene. But his voice carried an unmistakable command authority that made all 3 men freeze. Omar looked at his companions. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. And then Omar nodded. That's when everything happened at once. Ahmed lunged toward the metal detector, trying to rush past Robert toward the gate area. Malik reached into his jacket, pulling out what looked like a detonator device. And Omar shouted something in Arabic, not a prayer, but a command. 20 years of SEAL Team 6 training took over. Robert moved like water, like lightning, like someone who had done this exact thing hundreds of times before. He grabbed Ahmed's arm as he tried to rush past, using the man's own momentum to spin him around and slam him face first into the security desk. Ahmed hit hard and stayed down. Malik was still reaching for his jacket when Robert's elbow caught him in the solar plexus. Robert ducked under Omar's first swing, grabbed the man's wrist, and applied a pressure point technique that made Omar's entire arm go numb. The knife dropped. Robert spun Omar around, applied a blood choke that put him unconscious in 4 seconds, and lowered him gently to the ground. Total elapsed time, 11 seconds. The other passengers were just starting to realize something had happened. A few screams, people backing away, someone shouting for help. Robert calmly reached for his radio. "This is Hayes at Gate 27. I have 3 subjects in custody. Potential explosive device recovered. Need bomb squad and federal agents immediately. Do not approach. Scene is secure." What happened next was controlled chaos. FBI agents, bomb squad technicians, airport security rushing to the scene. The terminal was partially evacuated while experts examined Malik's carry-on bag. Inside, they found 3 pounds of plastic explosive, ball bearings for shrapnel, and a timer device, enough to bring down a commercial airliner or kill hundreds of people in a crowded gate area. The 3 men were part of a terror cell that had been planning to hijack Flight 447 to New York, then crash it into a target the FBI still won't publicly discuss. They'd spent 18 months preparing, studying airport security procedures, timing guard rotations, learning how to blend in. What they hadn't planned for was Robert Hayes. Agent Sarah Williams from the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force was the first federal agent on scene. As she watched the security footage of Robert's takedown, her expression changed from professional interest to outright amazement. "Who is this guy?" she asked Janet Morrison. "Just our security guard," Janet replied. "Actually, we were about to fire him. Passengers complain he's too slow." Agent Williams looked at Janet like she'd said something insane. "Ma'am, what you just saw wasn't slow. That was textbook counter-terrorism, professional level. I need to see this man's file immediately." That's when they discovered who Robert Hayes really was. 20 years Navy SEALs, SEAL Team 6. Operations classified so far above Janet's security clearance that she couldn't even read the mission names. 12 confirmed terrorist kills, 4 Bronze Stars, 2 Silver Stars, and a Navy Cross that he'd earned in a firefight in Somalia. Robert still works at Gate 27. He still takes his time with each passenger, still watches for details that others miss. But now, when passengers ask why he's being so thorough, his supervisors have a different answer. Because, they say, he's exactly the kind of person you want protecting you. The complaint letters stopped. The delays don't seem so important anymore. And every morning when Robert Hayes puts on his security uniform and walks to his checkpoint, he carries with him the knowledge that his service didn't end when he left the military.